this football club. In a week, we've just about beat an amateur team. We're being sued by a wannabe owner. We had just under 8k in attendance for an actual league game, and our manager and coach is getting nicked by Hull. Oh, and we go to top of the table away and get a point off them as well. What an incredible 7 days we've had. And honestly, it just gets better and better for a Hollywood script at this football club. Joining me today, as always, is Mr. Ross Webber. But there was really only one man that we could turn to after this hellish 7 days. Podcast royalty, still going as well, still current host of the Podcast Extra, which is coming back this week, by the way. It's Mr. Dan Wimbush. How are you, sir?
Gents, thanks so much for having me on with the two of you. It's the first time I've been on with you two. It feels like, this is our Avengers moment coming together at the absolute darkest hour. Although I'm sure you found Westy and, I was in on at that point.
We didn't, because we couldn't trust he wouldn't swear. So we didn't have him on, to be honest. But listen, it's great.
You won't swear at this point.
Well, I mean, if any listeners were offended by that, I mean, Ross will have bleeped it out in the edit anyway, so it's not a problem. But there's only one way to describe it, isn't there, Ross? I mean, that is literally it where we're at.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just, I knew you were going to swear. I didn't know what was going to come out of your mouth, and put that in your Cheerios. Good morning, anyone who's listening to this before 10 a.m.
What a sunny Tuesday morning we're all having. Or Monday evening when we're recording this now. Big thanks as always to ZCZ Films. We're rapidly approaching episode 400. Would you believe, Dan, of this podcast? All those years ago when it first started. We're gonna talk a little bit about the history of it later on with you, but we are on episode 399. This is the Tilehurst podcast. We still have a football club, regardless of what is actually going on. We're going to get into an awful lot of things in just a moment in the recap. So we're going to do that now.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
Right, welcome back to episode 399 of the Tilehurst podcast. I mean, I tried to wrap up the last 7 days there in a nutshell. If you're listening to this, you are fully aware of what's been going on at our beloved football club over those last 7 days. Even since we last did the pod, really, episode 398 with Matt from the Amazons. That's available now wherever you get your podcast. But
it's good,
it was really good. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, actually, go do listen to that if you didn't. I know last week kind of got swallowed, but that is a really good pod, and Matt had some really fun stuff to say. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, he really did. Little did we know, Dan, that we were going to have the next few days that we were going to have in terms of the Cambridge win, which we sort of predicted, but the very, very low attendance for that. The news about Coig, trying to sue. I'm laughing really, trying to sue us for not selling him the football club, or rather not us, but the current owner. And then, of course, Sellers and his two coaches nipping off to Hull for a new adventure. And in the midst of all that, we drew at Wycombe. Let's talk about Wycombe first of all, Dan. We were saying off air, whichever way you look at it, it's probably a good point, right? All things considered in terms of, recent history away form, but also the week we've had in terms of changing manager, surely.
Yeah, I think, whenever this game had come, whether we were going onto the back of it after 10 wins in a row, a fresh takeover, and Ruben Sellers winning manager of the month for the 5th month in a row, I'd still have taken a point away at the informed team in this division. Look, you can't knock what Wycombe have done. I think, as much as it might begrudge me to say it, Wycombe are one of those clubs that we need to be looking towards for how we kind of build a football club in the future and what they've done and the togetherness they've built. So let's go away from there, get a 1-1 draw, especially as well after coming from behind to do so, because we've been there so many times as Reading fans, isn't it? We go a goal down away from home and that's it. The floodgates, you think back to games like Stockport, Wrexham, that's it. Game over and done. But to come back, get that equaliser, and look, probably, Pereira had to make a good save at the end, but Reading still had a fair share of opportunities. I think possession was about 50-50. So we could have walked away with a lot more. And it did really remind me of, I think was it Bristol City that we went away just when McDermott might have just taken over or just permanently got the job. We got I think it might have been Simon Church scoring really late on. And that just kind of kicked us on for the rest of the season. I'm just hoping that this keeps the momentum going, because it had been really doom and gloom. It had felt like, everything was completely caving in on us. And, if we'd gone and got a 3-4-0 hiding, that would have just spiraled. But as it is, it's kept that playoff push going. It's kept the good feeling going. And it might just have, I think I said in our little Tyler Sane group chat, it felt like the mood kind of turned from woe is me, this is really sad, to go on then, bring it on. We'll fight for this. We'll get our backs to the wall. We'll dig ourselves out of this situation again. And immediately you've got this fantastic result to, give you that impetus going forward.
It's a really good point about it coming from behind too. Sorry, Ben, just to jump in, because I was a little bit concerned about, I guess, like how some of the players would be feeling and whether they would be feeling sorry for themselves. And Wim's right. We've seen like a bunch of times whereby Reading have gone one down away from home and the floodgates have opened. And the fact that within 15 minutes, the players are like, no, come on, then let's get back at it and keep going and score. It's a good sign.
Well, yeah, I mean, you both make good points there. I mean, Lubala scored on 18 minutes, and at that point you're thinking, okay, this could end up being a long day. Lo and behold, 12 minutes later, wonderful through ball from Mbenge. Like, if you haven't seen the goal, we're convinced this Mbenge that's knocking that ball through. Absolutely fantastic. Admittedly, the Wycombe centre back gets it all wrong in terms of trying to clear that. The ball falls to Sam Smith, who kind of smashes it against the keeper, and Harvey Knibb still has a bit to do really in terms of controlling the rebound and then slotting it home. But we've talked a lot about Sam Smith on this podcast, but we look at Harvey Knibbs, Ross, and really he's becoming one of the coolest, calmest players we've had in many a year. Really, how impressed overall have you been with him over this last block of games that we've had?
I think that I'll go back to something I was saying a few weeks ago, which is that I'm very impressed with Harvey Knibbs, but he's one of a core of players, in the spine who are a little bit older than some of the more, academy age kids and players that have come from academies recently, who's just, they're always at like a 6 out of 10 in pretty much every single game. And that's the thing that really I love about Knibbs is the consistency. Obviously, he's now playing at a second position this season. And there was a lot of chat in the aforementioned TT group chat before the game about whether this is Reading's strongest side that they put out. Obviously, no Kelvin right now because he's out injured, and he was the starting left winger throughout the first part of the season. But yeah, I think there's an argument to be made that even with Savage in the midfield and Knibbs on the left side, this is still Reading's strongest 11 right now. What has impressed me though is that I think the first game that he got out on the left wing spot, Knibbs seemed a little bit just out of sorts and maybe not quite arriving in the same positions that we've been expecting him to, not managing to get off as many challenges. But over the past few weeks, as he spent more time in that position, he's been able to readapt his game again. And so the ability to do that, the ability to play in, I mean, you're both on the left side of midfield or moving forward, but I think it's just important to have that flexibility. And again, he is just a really important member of the spine of the team.
Yeah, I mean, looking at his stats now, Wim, he's had 18 appearances across the season, all 4 competitions in terms of League One, EFL Trophy, FA Cup, and the EFL Cup, which was very short-lived, I have to say. 9 goal involvements, really, plus quite a long injury. He was out for a period of time there. That's not bad going, is it, really? For a player, as Ross said, that isn't exactly young, but is kind of almost approaching, if not at the prime of his career currently.
Yeah, and if you look at the fact that 6 of those goal involvements have come in sort of the last 9 games, and a couple of those were sub appearances against Fleetwood and Cambridge as well. But he's got the hot hand, and that can only benefit the rest of the team. We had worried about the amount of pressure that was being put on Sam Smith to score goals. We talked about it. You guys talking about it. I think I sent in a question earlier in the year about what did the loss of Femi Aziz do to the rest of that attacking lineup, and was it all a bit too one-dimensional? Was there just too much emphasis on Sam Smith to get it right? And now, like you say, you've got Harvey Knibbs popping up, scoring goals and creating goals as well. I mean, you've got me on clearly as a nostalgia act, which I'm more than happy to play into. And again, going back to my comparisons, that goal that he scored at Wycombe, typically under a Noel Hunt first permanent game as well. It just reminded me that a little bit of when Noel Hunt scored against West Ham. That bundled effort with Jason Roberts and that Knibbs finish just kind of reminded me of that one. So I just thought that was a kind of bit of fitting symmetry. But look, it's fantastic. And again, look, we're going to come on to all the not so good bits. Almost, this is kind of one of those times where you almost don't want somebody like Knibbs playing themselves into such form with a certain transfer window opening ever closer. But look, he's become a real important part of the attack, and it's created a good problem for Noel Hunt to have when Kelvin does get himself back fit again.
Well, we're going to talk about Noel Hunt in due course. Obviously, we haven't mentioned him up until this point, really. But huge credit to him to not stepping into the role, but just kind of keeping it going, and obviously coming into a team that potentially he didn't pick. We're led to believe on Saturday. So it'll be interesting what changes he makes moving forward, and obviously for the Blackpool game in the league this coming Saturday. Harvey Knibbs spoke glowingly about Noel Hunt in his post-match interview with BBC Barks, I think, in terms of, it made a lot of sense to bring him in, and the kind of the continuity that we want to see at the football club. Going back to the game, there was a possibility that we could have had a penalty, and when you look at a certain angle, particularly, behind that goal, as I think you shared, women in the group, it does look like a penalty. Wasn't given by the ref, who was kind of right behind it, felt that Sam Smith had dived and was given a yellow card, which is the way modern football goes, unfortunately, in terms of if you go down in the box and it's adjudged not to be a penalty, you're likely to get booked for it. Away from that possibility, Wim, do you think that we had enough opportunity to win the game, or do you think on the balance of play in terms of what you saw, the point shared was reflective of the game itself?
Yeah, look, we have mentioned the game was played in absolutely horrific conditions. So credit to the nearly 2,000 Reading fans that packed out that away end. In the extended highlights feed that I've seen, they pan a couple of times, that classic shot of the floodlights, and it's literally raining sideways. I think there was a moment as well in the first half where a long sort of speculative boot downfield almost catches Pereira off guard, and the ball nearly kind of swirls into the net. And the one at the end with McCleary as well, the outside of the foot shot that he tips away. But other than that, we did have a few chances. And like you say, Sam Smith, on another day, that's a penalty. I can absolutely see why the ref has given it from where he's positioned. He's kind of obscured by the goalkeeper. So it must just him look as if Smith has either kind of initiated contact himself or just gone down. But yeah, that behind the goal view, again, the officials just don't see. Certainly looks like his knee is, or sort of his upper leg is caught by the goalkeeper's knee. So unfortunate. But yeah, look, Savage had a good long range drive as well. On another day, maybe we do get that bit of extra luck. But I think all in all, a draw seemed fair, and I don't think either team will have too many complaints.
And Ross, just to wrap up Wycombe before we go on to the real meaty stuff, God forbid we actually get to a point where we just talk about football on this podcast and nothing else. But
Never.
We're not at that stage yet, certainly not after this week. A point away to league leaders who are currently top, obviously. They're leading Birmingham, who've spent, I think £500 billion, I read. Wrexham as well, who have obviously spent a fair bit of money in terms of the expectation they have. Going away to top of the table team with our recent away form and the week that we've had to get a point is no mean feat. But really, I suppose the question is, what does that show you, and what does that continue to tell you about the attitude and the testament to the work ethic of this football team, basically?
Yeah, I think that's something that is obviously instilled in all of the players at the moment, and I think that it's just we talked about the Reading way with Matt last week, and that's something that in the cliched manner, Reading we want to think of ourselves as scrappy, a little bit underdoggy, and always pushing, and I think that we're in a good situation to kind of express that, you know, Reading way, regardless of who the manager is, regardless of who's sitting in the you know, in the hot seat, as it were. So yeah, I think that clearly the players are wanted to show that they still had, you know, just because Ruben was gone, it doesn't mean that things were going to fall to pieces. And like we were saying with Wim earlier, the players not falling apart after the first goal went in kind of showed that they did have that determination about them. So yeah, that was really encouraging. You know, I think at this point, if this team had any kind of depth, and if this wasn't a team that we had, if we had chosen to have this particular team, then right now we might be thinking, you know, about our playoff push even more seriously and all these kinds of things, because the team are just playing really well and have been playing well for a while. Michael Craig's been doing enough, you know, to be a playoff or playoff pushing right back, you know, in this team for the whole season now. So I think that if it wasn't a case whereby, like, you know, we've put this team together because we have to, we don't really have any other options, we can't buy players, we might be looking at them like, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, it's great that they went and got like a point at Wycombe, but they're a good team. And like the thing that I was really happy about last week was that I was convinced from immediately, as soon as I knew it was Cambridge we were playing, it's like, oh yeah, we'll win that game. Like, we've got more than enough quality to win that game. And then we did. Like, and that's where this squad is at in terms of performance level right now. So if it wasn't, you know, the case whereby the squad is so thin, and there are so many other things going on with the club, then I might be more openly thinking, well, yeah, this is a really good team. I would hope that they can go and get a point on the road against Wycombe. But yeah, like Wim says, you got to respect what they've done. So good point on the road.
And also, if I can dwell just on the positive before we get into the real negatives in the meat. You look at the league table right now. Wycombe, we've played them away. Wrexham played them away. Birmingham away. Stockport away. Bolton away. Barnsley away. We've played most of the top teams away from home. They've all got to come to our place and look at our home record over 2024. And as Ross said, if this team had a bit of depth, if you took away all the off-field uncertainty, you'd be sitting there thinking, we're in a great position to make up some points and win some of these 6 pointers and actually have a decent shot of, look, I'm going to say it, everything being equal, you would be sitting there saying, well, why can't we chase down the top 2? Yeah, maybe Birmingham are too strong and they'll pull away, because I imagine they'll go and spend 10 million quid on players in January. But certainly Wrexham have looked like they've got that bit of wobble in them, and everybody else, as I said, is there for the taking. So it's the great shame, and again sets us up, I suppose, nicely for that next part. But you are sitting there thinking, any other time, as Ross said, fully deserved going away to the top of the league and getting a point.
Well, look, whichever way you spin it right now, we are in 6th. We're on 31 points from 18 games played. Goal difference is a lot weaker than the rest of the rest of the top 5 in front of us. However, there is a nice looking cushion from 8th, where Barnsley sitting with 27 points. We have a game in hand on them, but we're still 4 points clear. And then what's even better is that Mansfield in 10th are on 24. So there is a nice gap opening up for us in terms of that kind of chasing pack. In the top 6, top 7. So look, I think January, as we will go on to, is going to be pivotal for where we are in terms of those aspirations. I think, obviously, in terms of, as you said, the teams that have got to come to us at home, that's infinitely better than playing them away based on the home form and how positive we've been, at the SCL. So anything's possible. I think we might as well get into the whole Ruben Sellers thing now, but in terms of how that's played out, it will be interesting to see what the players choose to do in January, whether or not there are sensible bids and how that moves forward, really. So before we get into the Sellers move, just to recap the timeline, we played Cambridge on Tuesday night, a comprehensive 3-0 win. We haven't really talked about that, but it was very, very comfortable indeed in the end for us. Could have been more, really. Cambridge were incredibly poor, but it doesn't take away the job that the players did on the pitch at that time. There were rumours at that point of Sellers moving to Hull. He was asked about that in the post-match presser, said that he was very happy, never even been to Hull, and that was that. And as Wednesday then turned into Thursday, it looked inevitable that he was the number 1 target. compensation, we believe, was agreed with the club fairly quickly. It was then down to him to agree personal terms and expectations with his new club. And then that was officially announced on Friday by us. I say us, but the football club itself, even though we kind of all knew that that was happening at that point. By that time, there were very strong rumours that Noel Hunt was going to take over. We didn't quite know for how long, but he has been handed a 2.5-year deal, which is confidence. That's a real slap on the back. Let's rock and roll here, Noel, in terms of that contract length.
Yeah,
and he is now full-time manager of Reading Football Club. We've been backwards and forwards with this, and anyone listening to this will have their own opinions of where they were when the news broke about Sellers to where they are now. And I would imagine that they are very different opinions and feelings based on the weekend and how things have transpired. Ross, let's go to you first of all, in terms of where you're at with the whole process.
Sure.
What are you? Where are you at right now with the whole Sellers whole thing?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because I think that this is the first time where we've been in a position for a while as Reading fans where we've lost a manager because he has taken a step up. I'm trying to even remember. Do either of you guys remember when the last time this happened was? I think in the last few have all been fired for various reasons. So obviously this happens. But I don't remember it happening to Reading for a very, very long time. And it kind of just sucks. I think that this is another moment where I'm being confronted with the reality of being a League One side. And it's something that obviously we got relegated, almost 2 years ago now. And so obviously I've had a lot of time to make peace with that. And we've been in League One. We've been playing your Mansfields, your Northamptons for a little while now. But every now and again, you are reminded, oh yeah, this is another level down from the Championship where we got so used to playing. And I think that certainly when I spoke about Sellers and where he might end up next, my brain got fanciful and thought, oh yeah, maybe he wants to go back to Valencia or go back into Europe or do something fun like that. I certainly didn't think that European City of Culture Hull would be the first choice of Ruben, but he says in his statement there that for what he and his coaching staff were trying to do, it seemed like they had a fit. So I think at this point, it's clear to me that Ruben, made the choice to leave. I think that Ruben I think he was really burned by the events around Femi leaving and Kohig and the deal ending there. And I think since then, he's probably been in a state of mind. And this is speculation, idle speculation. It seems to me that he's been in a state of mind since then that if a good deal came along, then he might be willing to take it at that stage, because I think he definitely seemed to me to start talking just a little bit differently after the Kohig deal did collapse. So look, he stuck around for a really long time. He's going to be somebody that I remember for a long time as one of my favorite Reading managers. He's somebody who brought, I think, a very elite level of tactics and just very modern football mentality to the club, which is something that I think that has really helped to shake up the football side of the operation. And just from where we were with Paul Ince before, chuck the ball up top to Andy Carroll, hope for the best, and maybe we'll win a game or two, to where we ended up with a team that could bring in 16-year-olds and they consistently be able to play in the kind of structure and game plan that Sellers wanted. Just an incredible piece of coaching, in my opinion. So, it's a tough one. I definitely think that, like I said, Ruben is the one who chose to leave here, and that kind of sucks. I don't begrudge him that much. I think he's put up with a lot at Reading, and it just kind of sucks again that this is the situation that we're in.
Some good points there. For me, he doesn't sit as one of my favourite Reading managers. Like I liked him, and my perception of him changed from a fickle point of view. But the minute he started winning games, I was like, he's great. But just his mentality, really, all jokes aside, in terms of how he was able to handle the absolute nonsense that he was thrown, and the humility and the respect and the way in which that he he dealt with a pretty horrendous stuff, in terms of protests and being thrown under the bus repeatedly by those higher up, and managing what was essentially a shoestring budget, well, a zero budget side with youth players with inexperience, and he, we said last week he made a lot of them infinitely better over the time that he was with them, and that's something that can't be ignored, and obviously Hull City couldn't ignore. I mean, before we get into your kind of emotional, this is where I'm at stage, just talk us through what you understand in terms of the compensation, but the process that was followed by Hull in terms of approaching Reading, and the decision that the club had to make, but mainly Sellers had to make, in terms of him ultimately moving up north to go and coach a team that plays in horrendous orange and black. Really, I don't say that because I'm wearing but I'm wearing Pereira's kit, right? So it's a different color. It's like a sunset orange, but Hull's is like a dirty orange.
Yeah.
It's like an orange that's been left in the fridge too long. That sort of colour.
Yeah, the irony, just in general, of going to Hull, a team who were very nearly bought by Dai Yong, is delicious, isn't it? Really, in hindsight. In terms of the timeline, look, of course, the bookies odds got slashed on Tuesday, and Sellers was asked about it, and as you mentioned, Benny, it was like, I've never even been to Hull. As far as we know, the official approach was made the following day. Reading were careful to say in the statement that Hull have met the conditions of his release clause. Now, is that a financial release clause, or is it just simply a clause in his contract that said I'm allowed to talk to a team in a higher division? That we don't know, but I thought that was very interesting, because it wasn't just Hull have made an approach for our manager and we've allowed him to go and speak to him. This is a case of, well, they didn't have a choice. Like, if the release clause was met, as Ross said, this was down to Sellers. Sellers had the decision to leave, and he's taken it. And just going up to a couple of things that Ross said, in terms of managers making a move above, you have to go back to Alan Pardew, who was poached by West Ham, and Sir Trevor Brooking back in 2003. While Reading, I think, were above West Ham in the table. I think we might be second at the time.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
And before that, of course, the one that really got the fans' ire, just as I literally started, a couple of weeks before my first game, in fact, Mark McGee got yoinked by then Premier League Leicester City. That was one, again, that was very tempestuous, because McGee came out and I think he famously said, I'm staying, and then just turned around and went to Leicester. Didn't go very well at Leicester. I think he lasted less than a year. But that one was very bitter, and hence why there is a song sung about Mark McGee to this day. And in both occasions on that, you could see the logic. I mean, West Ham are a big club. Did you know that they had three players that won the World Cup? I don't know if their fans mentioned. Yeah, might have been. And in McGee's case, Leicester were in the Premiership at the time, and Reading were still playing at Elm Park. Again, the bitterness came in both occasions because Reading had good squads, and it is like this situation. I mean, we talk about Reading could be swapping places with Hull very, very easily. So that's where and the other thing that Ross said that piqued my interest was when he said he's been here a long time, and it just feels long, but he's been in the job 18 months. He's been in the job a shorter length than Powell knows. In fact, I think his tenure might have even been less than Paul. No, slightly longer than Paul Ince, I think, just about. But that's how long these seasons come and feel like as Reading fans.
I mean, the thing that smacks for me is, and look, I was always very open about the fact that it wasn't going well in around October, November time of his first season. There was no real discernible style. The players didn't really know what they were doing. It seemed like Sellers was deliberately ignoring some of the senior pros that he could have been using at that time, which, in hindsight turned out to be the right thing to do in terms of bringing those youth players through and trying to work with what, Mark Bowen and the transfer team at the time had brought in for him. And then it just sort of clicked and turned. And the thing for me was always how he dealt with the off-field issues. I'm still not convinced that he is a great manager. But that's not me, sour grapes or bitterness. I'm just not sure that he is as good as maybe he's been touted to be. But the thing that sticks with me, and the thing that you mentioned there, Wim, is that it seems like this is the first club that's really showed interest and flashed eyes at him, and he's gone, yeah, do you know what? I'll do that. And you know, I got slated in the week for the video that I put up around, you know, him going to Hull. I stand by that. I don't understand why you would, you know, you'd uproot your family from a place like Winchester, if that's what he's doing in terms of the travel, to go to somewhere like Hull, which really is a bit of a footballing outpost. I know they've had, you know, sort of stints in the Premier League and done all right there, but like you said with West Ham, that really stung with Alan Pardew. But you kind of understood it, you know, as you get older and you understand football logistics. Like when a club like that comes calling and you want to move away from Reading, yeah, okay, it hurts, but that you understand that to a similar extent with Leicester in the Premier League. But Hull just doesn't, you know, given the way that they're run and have been run and the kind of player profile they have, I think he's going to find it very, very difficult up there, you know. And moving forward, he's left what could have been a really good project if we got our house in order to you know, to move straight away to a club that's higher up the pyramid at the moment. So
That's
I think,
more. That's the concern for me, is that he doesn't think that the club is about to get its house in order. And from what he knows, he's like, you know what, I don't have another 6 months in me of this. Because like, yeah, I guess, yeah, I didn't even realize that how short the tenure had been. All right, it did, but it hadn't even occurred to me when putting that out there. And you know, if he's already like, okay, I'm done with this. Like clearly it has been a long, 15, 16 months for him as well.
And look, from a fan's point of view, we're worn down by it. We're jaded from it. You know, we are very, very wary. We've been very, very negative, I think, and rightly so in terms of what's been going on and kind of very, very nervous about what each day brings. But it just feels a little bit like, right, well, that's the first one, I'm off. See you later. And I know that's how football works. And I don't subscribe to the fact you can pin this one on the owners, really, unless, of course, they've had a conversation and said, look, this player's going, that player's going, that player's going. You know, pre-contract's already been signed or whatever. You know, do what you want. I don't know. I think it's just football mechanics, personally. I don't know what you two think.
Well, and also, you know, you're talking about him, you know, possibly wanting stability and sensibleness, and you're going to a club that has literally just sacked a manager after 18 games. Who got rid of Liam Rosenior after their best season in a long time. This is an owner that has already shown that he's trigger happy. You know, Avaladze had 30 games, and looking at it here, this is a club also in a ridiculous sense of transition and flux, with an owner that's clearly demanding success. So,
yeah,
I think the only thing you can say is that, look, I mean, what did he get? Was it a 2.5, 3-year deal? I think he signed.
He would have doubled his money as well, right? And he would have been guaranteed
this.
He's getting paid. So
exactly,
I suppose that's an element to it, isn't it?
Yeah, and from a purely professional point of view, again, and it's interesting, he talks about, you know, the projects and stuff like that. I think this is where I agree with you, Ben, in that it doesn't quite sit right, because if you're desperate to keep up a kind of a project and stuff, why are you parachuting yourself into a championship relegation battle under a trigger happy owner in a tougher division with a bunch of players that you don't know? It's like it's a massive gamble, because if it goes badly at Hull, people will forget the good work he done at Reading. People will immediately go, well, he failed at Hull, took Southampton down. You know, is this guy really that good? Whereas if he'd stayed at Reading and another club comes along with more stability, maybe a mid-table championship team that may have lost their manager somewhere bigger like that, or he just waits until the summer. And even if the ship goes, if it goes completely tits up here at Reading and Reading end up mid-table, they've had to sell all their players in January, Sellers is still an absolute hero, and he's got a summer. He can pick a nice project to go to. It just, there either is something going on in the background there, or like you say, he's just gone, do you know what? I can't turn this down. It's good money for my family. And I'm just going to make that move.
Yeah.
Well, Reading moved on quickly with. Oh, go on, Ross. Sorry.
Wait. I got one little summary.
That was a perfect segue into what I was going to say. Then
I know it was, but I have a funny little thing. If I am thinking of, like, obviously Hull have money, right? And we're thinking about players who are going to leave. I don't necessarily think that he would follow Sellers, but I think if Sellers is buying anyone, you know, like a bottle of champagne or something at Reading for his time there, buy one for Michael Craig, Ruben, because Michael Craig kind of saved him twice, I think, during his Reading career. Obviously, Michael Craig is a huge part of the 4-1-4-1 that was able to kind of like wrangle things back under control for Reading last season. And he was kind of like the player that kind of got Reading, just like doing the basics, doing the little bits again, so that, we could actually put together some consistent performances. And then if he didn't have him at right back this season, does the right back position look anywhere near as good as it has done? So yeah, I don't know. It's just like a little weird one whereby it occurred to me that Michael Craig has kind of been a really important player for Sellers. And I go back a lot to talk about how like Nick Blackman, when we spoke to him, he said that, Nigel Atkins, lovely guy, but they didn't get on because he's not the kind of player that just works in Atkins' system. And it's just funny how like sometimes players and coaches have such an effect on each other's careers. Like it's such a huge effect. And I think that Michael Craig has had a huge effect on Sellers' career, and Sellers has had a big effect on Michael Craig's career. So yeah, that's my last little summary point for him.
Well, we'll watch what happens in January with bated breath. I mean, the main thing is it's only 31 days long, so that's good. It's not like we've got to tick away or anything, is it? So
I was going to say as well that we should mention as well. I think James Earnshaw reporting, who we'll have on the pod extra plug alert on on Wednesday night, saying that there is apparently a clause that Sellers is not allowed to take any of our players this January to Hull.
Okay.
So, as he put it, that only leaves 90 other clubs able to
Exactly. Yeah, well, you'd like to think none of them are going to League Two, with all due respect. You'd like to think they're all looking up rather than sideways moves, but you never know in football. You never know. And that obviously leads on nicely to Reading moving on incredibly quickly from Sellers. It's almost like, the replacement was there ready to go, waiting in the wings in terms of experience, but also knowing the club. Noel Hunt was announced pretty much instantly, really, on a 2.5-year deal, which is a positive thing because it stops all the kind of, who will it be and what are we rumoured with and all this kind of stuff. And in my opinion, it keeps consistency in terms of where those players are. We understand that he is widely respected by most, if not all, of those players at the club currently. And it just seemed like a really, really good fit. I know people will point to him being an interim charge after he who shall not be named was sacked. But it's a very, very different scenario now in terms of him being given the role straight away, in terms of saying, there you go, mate, you crack on, 2.5 years, bang. I mean, what do we make of Noel Hunt, apart from being, one of our... Is he a cult player? I don't know.
Oh,
would he get in most Reading fans' all-time 11s? He probably wouldn't, would he?
Oh, not all-time 11s, but like cult player. The Hunt brothers are way up there for me. And I might because I'm I don't know, I'm about 10 years younger than you guys, so he fits nicely into the kind of thing. I don't know what a Mark McGee is, guys. I'm doing my best over here. All right, so like the Hunt
We're talking to a child, Dan. We're talking to a child.
I know, yeah. So, we haven't got Ryan here today, so we haven't got another 10 years below me, so we're doing all right. But because he doesn't even really remember 106 quite as well, but I remember that. Don't worry. The Hunt brothers are well up there as cult Reading heroes. Wim mentioned Simon Church earlier, by the way, as well, which that fits right into my teenage nostalgia bubble, the Simon Church years. So anyway, the Hunt brothers. Yeah, let's go.
But that's him as a manager, right? That's him as a player. So what are we saying about him as a manager for where we're at right now? Open floor, go for it.
I think the thing I think I said on social media is, if you look at his experience level, he's got more experience than Brian McDermott had, than Alan Pardew had, than Mark McGee had. He's done his time, and he's not just coached at Reading either. He has been out coaching elsewhere. He knows the players at this club. He knows the football club. I think, I don't think you would make your all-time Reading 11, but I think if you were looking at an unsung hero 11, the way he provided a foil for the likes of Jason Roberts, Kevin Doyle, Adam LaFondra, others through the years, he was always described as that absolutely unselfish man. And this is exactly what he's just done now. He's just taken on this job at a time. He would have been well within his rights to actually say, do you know what? Especially he has an inkling of what's coming in January to say, do I really want my first big job to be here? And seen to be the guy that's undone the good work of Ruben Sellers. He stepped up, he signed that 2.5-year deal, and he's already, you talk about statesman, and he's maybe not what you would typically say as a statesman, but for everything a statesman embodies and you want to represent your club right now, that is what Noel Hunt is. And look, you ask for people to go, you talk about a pathway for young coaches in this game. There's this constant criticism about young British and Irish managers not getting the opportunities that they deserve. What else could you possibly give someone an opportunity other than a League One job where they've learned their trade, they know the players, they've even done the job for a couple of months before? So this was one that was an absolute no-brainer for me. And in fact, if anybody else had come in, I would have been disappointed, because who realistically, other than there was a little part of me that was like, go on, give it to Neil Warnock for the lols. And he would have been just about the only person where I would have gone, okay, give it to Warnock for the end of the season. But even Warnock, I think, has had his copybook tainted a bit by what happened at Aberdeen. So yeah, I'm 100% in team Noel Hunt. Go and grasp it with both hands. And look, he's played a top of the league team twice and he's drawn twice. So not many managers say they're unbeaten against top of the league teams.
I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself, though. It's an absolutely spot-on couple of points there, really. The only thing I would add is that what I say but what Brian Carey couldn't do, who, as we are led to believe, was the one who made the appointment, which was ratified by Dayong Pang, if he was available on the phone for 5 minutes. Clearly.
I think it was one of those situations where if you don't phone me back in an hour, I'm going to give it to Noel Hunt.
Just anyway.
I will take your silence as a yes.
Yeah, exactly. But what he didn't need to do was pick someone who was going to cause division within the fan base, because what we needed at that point was just to go, this has happened, we roll with it, we deal with it, he's good to go, let's get on with it. And from what I can see across social media and from talking to people that I know that are fans, and obviously you guys as well, 99.999% of people are behind him. Yes, you'll get people who say it was the easy option because of money and all the rest of it. But as you said, Dan, there still needs to be a willingness to take that. If you're getting paid 50 grand or 500 grand, it doesn't really matter. You still got to want to do the job. And he clearly wanted to do that, and he wanted to test himself. So I think that was a really, really good point. Ross, I can see you're itching to say something. You're literally scratching.
It's just a funny little way that Noel Hunt's come back to the club in general, because these crisis situations are when he is wheeled out. And so I was kind of trying to
wheeled out. What do you mean? Like
literally.
Let me explain this.
He was brought in right after, I think it was pretty much the same week Pauno was sacked, and the club was in really, the fan base was really fired up at that point, really not happy at all. And they brought in Paul Ince, obviously, and that had a lot of fans going, well, what the hell? Like, what is going on? Are we just giving
what could possibly go wrong?
Literally just giving it to a player's dad now. What is happening here? He was brought in as a senior professional development coach. As I remember at that time, he was just kind of like, I'll get involved with the academy, in some way. And I think Jilks was still there and maybe the first team, the academy coach at that point and stuff like that. So he was brought in then almost as a offering to the fans. Sorry, my wife is leaving for anyone who's watching on YouTube.
She's leaving you?
She's leaving. No, not like that. She's going out.
Has she gone to Hull? Come back. All is forgiven. Don't go to Hull. It's miles from me.
She's taking the assistant with her.
The dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. It's just funny how Noel Hunt always gets wheeled out in times when the club's in crisis and the fans are unhappy. And so look, he's already been brought in as somebody to make people calmer at various key times for the club. So now there's a way this ends really nicely, isn't there? Like, I'm bummed to lose Sellers, and I'm a little bit concerned about January. And I think that this definitely dents our chances of really making a promotion push or a playoff push this season. Don't get me wrong. But there's a not zero chance that this all ends quite nicely if we have a club legend comes back and actually turns out to be a good manager. You never know until he gets his first proper job.
Yeah, and I'll just wheel out the history lesson again for Ross here, in that when Mr. McGee left the club in late 1994, in the last century. In the, he was replaced by a committee of players at the time, which eventually boiled down. 4 players took charge, which eventually boiled down to 2 in what I think has got to be the last instance of joint player managers in Football League history, with Jimmy Quinn and Mick Gooding. And but where it references this is Reading were on such a decent roll with that team that they didn't really have to do very much. The squad was so small back then, they just kind of put the same players out on the pitch, and they just kept on rolling. They signed one player in January. I can't remember, it was January. Lee Nogan came in, and they got all the way to Wembley. So, and that is the kind of optimistic picture with Hunt here, in that actually, in a way, he's got a favour here, because it's not like when Sellers came in, and Ben mentioned he has those kind of fringe players, the Sam Hutchinsons, the Andy Carroll still lurking, where it might muddle their thinking. And you think, oh, do I bring some of the experienced players back? He's got nobody to bring back. He kind of has to follow the Sellers blueprint. So in that way, it's just kind of, he's just got to oil the wheels or whatever that analogy is, and just keep it going.
I mean, I wanted to succeed anyway, because I love the club and Reading fan through and through and all the rest of it. But, now, after Saturday's result, I was just like, do you know what? There's 2 fingers, mate. Have that. Yeah. And it was just like this kind of, we're developing, again, this siege mentality on the pitch. We've had it off the pitch for so long. Fans have been fighting for things that may never come to pass in terms of, or it feels like new owners at the moment. But actually, after that game, I was like, you're going to keep knocking us. You're going to keep doing this. These things keep happening to us. We're still going to keep going. And regardless of what goes on, and I think Sim sort of wrapped it up really nicely on social media, we are never, ever ignored as a football club. For a club that is supposed to be irrelevant and boring and, cardboard cutout and all the rest of it, the amount of fans that we seem to rattle is quite incredible, really. And I'm all for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's Reading against the world now. And if we can keep going and we can keep that 6th place, just hold on to that and get in the playoffs, that would just be, regardless of what happens from that point on, just be the greatest season. It really, really would. And I hope we do it. I hope we do it, because we deserve it, right? As a fan base, we
one hell of a night at the Purple Turtle if we do actually make it.
Incredible. And you're right, Wim. He's got an opportunity to write himself into absolute Reading folklore, like Steve Coppell-esque stratosphere. Brian McDermott sort of stratosphere in terms of what he could achieve with this club and this team, providing most of it stays together in January, really. So, look, we'll see what happens. We're gonna get into the mailbag now. We've got quite a few bits already covered, but a few other pieces that we can look at. So we're gonna have a very short break, and then we'll be back with the, what do we call it? I call it Listener's Corner, don't I? Which is rubbish, but
the mailbag.
Yeah, the listener's mail. I want to call it listener's something.
All right, listener hollow. I don't even know.
Or whatever. We'll be back. Have a little break, and we'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you R's!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.
Welcome back to episode 399 of the Tilehurst End podcast. Here with myself and Ross is TTE legend Daniel Wimbush. You got a pod coming out on Wednesday, right? Pod Extra, is that right?
Yeah, I'll be sitting down with James and Andy. I should have said at the top that I kind of feel that this Sellers stuff is all of our fault, because literally whenever a podcast extra comes out, something bad happens. And I think I'd literally just arranged it with the 2 of them when the news of Sellers leaving. So to show how much has happened, again, I'm an unprofessional joker for a podcast until the end, while we haven't had a pod extra for a while, since the end of the transfer window. And we were talking about that show about how Coeg's takeover was going to go through and everything would be hunky-dory. So we've got a lot to catch up on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting to those 2.
Well, look, we never stop. However bad it gets, there's going to be TT podcast until the club folds and ceases to exist. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep rolling. You've got 2 this week, this one, and then, of course, Wimby's Pod Extra, which will be out later on this week. So look out for that where podcasts are available. Right, mailbag time. Our dear sweet Ryan He's back. He says, if you were Noel Hunt, what Reading legends would make up your backroom staff? Let's go, Ross. Who would you go for?
Let's go with Jimmy Kebe, because no footballers seem to be able to put their socks on properly these days. So he'd be good for that. Kit man, perhaps something like that. I'd kind of want to see the other Hunt brother come back and get a reunion of those two. While we're going as well. So that could be a good one. Oh, but I'm not so sure about that. I mean, maybe get Jason Robertson and just bring back the spirit of 2012, and the last promotion, all those kinds of things. But I don't know. What about you guys?
Stunned silence.
No, it's all he really has to choose from, right? We were just saying, like, is Leisure Wood going to end up in his staff?
Well, I think the problem already there is Reading legends. What defines a Reading legend?
Yeah.
So I guess you go, which ex-Reading player would you like to see? Whim, shoot.
Let's get Joe Vandenberg in there just to scare everybody.
Hope Akpan.
Oh, yeah, Hope Akpan. Get Hal Robson Canoe in there to write some motivational speaking. Look, I was pleasantly, well, not pleasantly surprised. Understandably, it was interesting that Hunt mentioned, I think in his first interview, that he spoke to Brian McDermott before he agreed to take the job. So I think, look, I'm not sure what Brian's doing now, but I would like to see him in and around the club in some capacity. In terms of legends, I mean, there's not too many out there that are actively involved in coaching and stuff. I mean, maybe I think Chris Gunter's going through the Welsh FA, isn't he? I think he's involved in some of their youth teams, so maybe something along those lines. But I think that it's the danger is that you turn it into just a nostalgia act, and I think that almost takes away a little bit of Hunt's credibility. I think he's got Ledgerwood in there, who's been working his way again through the ranks, and I think that's a kind of perfect blend. And look, I think we've got to be bluntly honest here. How many? Two coaches left, so I think that would be the absolute maximum that Reading would allow him to bring in. So, it's. I said I don't want to see too many. Maybe just get Kevin Doyle in for the lulz. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, Tony Warner's. He was there on Saturday. We're led to believe he's still around the club at the moment.
He was certainly on the bench anyway. I saw him sat there with Ledgerwood.
And I guess it will take time to to formulate the backroom plan in terms of what goes on. I think Peter Grant has gone with him as well, either temporarily or full time. I don't know. It depends who's looking after the under-21s really. But a cliche and boring, and people are yawn. But Graham Murty's done incredibly well in the game. Since he retired, and I think
that's a good shout.
Actually, given where the club is in terms of bringing those youth players through and putting your arm around them and supporting them and kind of, being really, really positive. I mean, I was on a pod. Well, what was it? A pod? It's like the Talking Royals that Johnny Hunt does, which is fantastic, by the way. And I think he's doing that almost weekly at the moment. He had Graham Murty on last season, and he was just talking to a few of us, and the things he was saying about dealing with the young players were exceptional. And I've not heard a coach talk about young players in that way before. So for me, if the option was there to bring Graham Murty home, because he'd struggle to find a player more universally liked by the fan base than him. In terms of his experience, up at Rangers, obviously been at Southampton for a bit and is now, I think, still at Sunderland, under 21s. He would be a really, really good fit for this football club currently. So, to answer your question, Ryan, a kind of a mixed bag, really. But I would go Murty. I think he would be a really, really good fit. I don't think he'd cost a lot of money either, personally.
There is one other obvious one. Again, someone that's been working their way through the coaching. Brynjar Gunnarsson, I think, has been doing his badges and stuff over in Iceland. Yeah. So I think, and again, again, that's someone that's earned their way through and also ticks that box being Reading legend. So maybe get Bryn in. Probably still do a job actually as well. I'm sure he could still whip in a nice cross from right back.
He could, as long as we're playing Liverpool, he'd be all right. Right, Tom Hill, another contributor. Fair play. Personally, I was slightly surprised at where Sellers left to go, of all places. So what would it take to convince each of you to pack your bags and move to Hull?
Management of the football team is just about the only thing, actually.
Right, I will go first. You couldn't pay me to go to Hull.
Okay.
That's
Your
pretty much it.
travel guide this year is you're really filling
It's
your
just
page in.
another place. You guys keep talking. I'll find the text from my dad.
You know
he
that,
sent me.
like, we're gonna find out. There was that book. It was like toilet humor in the UK forever. It's like worst places in the UK or whatever, and it was just a list, just a book full of just basically every town talking about why it was awful. We're gonna find out in a few years' time, just like we found out the secret footballer was Dave Kitson. We're gonna find out that you are actually the guy writing the worst places in the UK book, because I don't know if you. Where do you like? What's your favorite place outside of Reading?
My favourite place.
Yeah.
Oh, what in this country?
I don't mind. You can think about it. I'm just like, I'm just wondering what goes in the happy side of the travel guide.
I mean, in the UK generally, I mean, Edinburgh is fantastic as a city.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to be playing Hearts anytime soon, though.
Well, I mean, there's loads of places in Wales I love. I mean, Cardiff's a great city, fantastic place. A lot of places around, the valleys in Wales, obviously where my heritage is from. I mean, there's not many places that I'd go, yeah, that's a really great place in terms of England.
Fair. Tom, this is how much we don't want to move to Hull. This is how
much
around.
Well, look, my dad texted me Friday morning after the video that I put out, and he put, I see you made friends with a number of Hull fans. And I put, yeah, just so weird, aren't they? And he wrote, that's Hull for you. If you've ever been, you'll understand why. Wow. Which I thought was pretty scathing of him. So thanks for that, Dad. Thanks for
this is the 2017 UK capital of culture. I'll have
it's
it.
A joke. It's a shambles. They didn't go there, did they?
Well, look.
If they'd read your travel guide, they wouldn't have gone there.
I've got some friends who went to uni there, and they had a great time. Whether it was because they were drinking all the time, I'm not sure. What would it take to move to Hull? Yeah, a hull of a lot of cash, I think.
I love it.
But, and in terms of great places in the UK, Cornwall, Falmouth, absolutely lovely.
Yeah,
and in the northwest, the lakes. I went to university up in Lancaster, which is just a lovely city. So and has a football stadium called the Giant Axe, which I think is the best stadium name as well for Lancaster City. So there you go. There's my trivia of the day. But yeah, chuck me a hull of a load of cash, and I'll move to Hull.
I mean, that's a good point. The Lake District is absolutely stunning as a place. It's really it's exceptional.
Exeter was nice. We tried to get the Exeter's a whole chant going, and it only went off like once or twice because people were like going, "It's actually all right here. It's not too bad."
Yeah, it's quite nice. I don't mind it.
Yeah, it's all right. The high street's not completely dead looking. There's a bill.
Yeah.
But also, look, we need to invite the people from Hull, don't we? We need to invite those from Hull, those with positive Hull, to get in touch with us on socials. You have a right to defend your city.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think we might burn that bridge after this week, to be honest.
And they've had, it's a place where loads of former Reading players and managers go. You've had Rossini, Nigel Adkins was former Hull manager, Phil Parkinson, former Hull manager. It's obviously
Stephen Hunt was there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Was Quinn Hull as well? I know he's a player, not a coach. Maybe Stephen Quinn.
Oh, I think we got him from Hull, didn't we? We got Quinn and McShane, didn't we? Around the same time from Hull.
Did we briefly have David Myler, or am I just inventing that?
No, we did.
Yeah, we did. He spent more time on FIFA, didn't he, than playing?
Yeah.
Didn't work out well for him either. He was another random signing, but yeah, there we go. Right, well, hopefully that answers your question, Tom. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Another Tom, RDMH71, all in capitals. If that's you, Tom, thanks again in touch. Are players, managers and staff leaving just a realisation of our lower place in football now, not just how terribly mismanaged we've been and are?
Yeah, I'll jump on that. I agree with that. Yeah. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, I guess I've made peace with being a League One club, but occasionally something like this happens, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what being a League One club means, is that you might lose your players to Hull or Preston or Millwall rather than Crystal Palace or even clubs in that kind of ballpark. Are the clubs that are poaching from us now it's the Championship? It's not the lower half of the Prem.
Yeah, I agree, and it's also, we can't have our cake and eat it as fans. We bemoaned a lot of the Dye era for not selling people and letting people go when they want to move, keeping players that clearly wanted to move on, or in this case, obviously the manager wants to move on, and whether it's Danny Loader or John Swift and all these players that we've just let go for free over the years. Look, if Reading have got a decent bit of cash for the manager that wants to go, and that helps keep the lights on for another month or two, ultimately that's where we are in the food chain. Like you say, we are a League One club that can't obviously pay big wages either. Yeah, we've got a nice stadium and a nice training ground and in a promotion battle, but beyond that, you can't begrudge anybody. And we've touched on it a bit, but in January, I suppose we're bracing ourselves for all that interest that's going to come. And ultimately, if we want to be at least a semi-self-sufficient football club, we're just going to have to make those sales. I guess the difference at the moment is that any money we're getting coming in doesn't seem to be then going out. Whereas back in the day, if you sold a player, what was it? I think Brian McDermott talks about selling Gylfi Sigurdsson for $7 million, and then he replaced him with bizarrely Ian Hart, and I think he talked about somebody else as well that he brought in, and that's the kind of wheeling and dealing that we used to have to do. When John Medeski was talking about cutting the cloth, and that's, I suppose, what we're going to try and get back to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, and that leads us nicely on to the to the next question from Reading Info. I think this is a new account potentially. Who do you think is likely to leave in January? Ross. As in, Ross isn't leaving in January, to my knowledge. That's just a question to you.
That's the big announcement for the 400. There's nothing special.
You follow the cat's poll.
Don't worry, guys. Ross and his expected nonsense are out the door. No. Who's likely to leave in? I wouldn't be surprised if one of Savage or Elliott goes, because they have a lot of time left on their contract. And so in terms of trying to generate some money, that would seem like the place, that you could probably generate a little bit of money, because they got to pay off that contract. And then that contract comes off our books as the club as well. So we don't have to pay that out too. So that wouldn't surprise me, just because we can field a team, once Kelvin comes back, that only includes one of them in the starting lineup. And I think that both of those players, I talk a lot of trash about Savage just to wind Ben up, but both of those players are trending towards being, first teamers somewhere in the EFL for most of their careers. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of those go. The one I'm really hoping doesn't is Bindon, but I bought his shirt now, so he's almost certainly guaranteed to leave, given the procession of different Reading players who have appeared on the wall behind me and then left a few months later now. I guess I'm kind of expecting one of Savage or Elliott. I don't know which one I'd be more bummed to lose. I'm really hoping we don't lose Bindon, but it's a little bit concerning. He's really coming on even more now, man. I could talk about that.
Ridiculous. He's a ridiculous player.
It's ludicrous. Like Bindon was already an incredible player, like passing and receiving, and understands like how to bait a press and like move around the opposition and stuff like that. But now he's also like striding into space and like looking for better passing angles and things to move the ball forward. Like, an outrageously good player.
And we didn't even talk about it in the recap, that his slide tackle, the basically saved a goal going in as well. I think there was a moment later as well, he made a really good tackle as well, coming back into the box. So yeah, I mean, completely agree on that. I think the unfortunate answer to this one is, who could I see going? Anybody.
Yeah,
and you could make an argument for literally every single member of that starting lineup. I mean, Chem Campbell, his loan deal expires in January as well, so Reading could lose a player by default. I don't know where they're going to. I think that was all tied into the COIGs, I think, promising the funds or something like that. Again, I don't know for sure, but that was, of course, a very, very late deal on deadline day. But it was interesting that was only a 6-month loan deal. So they've also got to deal with that headache if the EFL don't allow them to extend that, or Wolves don't want Campbell to come back here, or vice versa. So, but yeah, anybody could be a bid. And I think Reading are at that stage. It would almost depend on who goes first. Do they have a quota? or is it, as some of the worst fears are from fans, that it is literally everybody's got a price, and that the owner is in such a desperate position that he just doesn't care, and that he will be looking, and if he can raise, I don't know, 12 million quid, being absolutely on the massive optimistic end, if you can make 12 million quid from a load of players, he'll take it, because who knows what's going on. So, but yeah, if you were talking on the realistic, if you were saying, okay, if Noel Hunt was deciding who could go, I agree with Ross. I think that would be the most sensible sort of one of those two could go.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion of that is I don't think we can lose anyone. I really don't. I think for me, worst case scenario is you lose one player from every department. And I think we haven't even touched on Smith and Nibs in terms of them potentially going. I think Elliott and Savage would command a fee because the buying club are going to have to eat that contract. But there's going to be other clubs knocking around looking at Smith and Nibs and going, do you know what, they could probably do a job for us. And that's going to take a couple of million to kind of get them away. So I honestly don't think anyone's off the table, really. And I just don't think, even Chem Campbell, I'm not sold on him completely, but we just can't afford, pardon the pun, to lose these players.
Do you think Birmingham would come sniffing around Lewis Wing in January? I've been wondering about that. I don't know. I'd have to take a look at Birmingham's team to see how he fits in. He's so Lewis Wing, if you're looking at Opta stats, is currently the highest ranking performer in League One. He was last season as well, incredibly high up. Birmingham kind of came into the league and they went, let's buy Alfie May, let's buy, I can't remember the name of the other lad, the winger, who's a League One performer as well. I just wonder if they're looking at what do we need to get out of this league. And
I think Lewis Wing's probably got one more move left in him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He might look at, hypothetically, if it's Birmingham or someone else, I think he might look at that and go, that's my last payday, really. Mm-hmm. I can't see him really having many more moves in him in terms of the money moves. You don't know, you don't know what other clubs are looking at and need, really. I think Savage is definitely one of the most attractive ones there, and Elliott as well, because of the creativity they bring to the team, and that to some extent, in some capacity, the kind of the flexibility within a system that they can play, but also you got to look at their age profile, and actually, Savage will end up being a consistent full international for Wales over the period of time when he gets that move. Elliott, similar sort of profile in terms of what he can do, but I don't know. I mean, January, I think if we can get through January, then you're probably looking at the summer where there will be a big turnover in players in the summer.
The key thing here is what's Reading's position, and this is the big question with the ownership at the moment. Is it literally a case of we need to raise? What position were they in March, where they were talking about we need to raise £1 million just to see out the season? As we got to that point yet? Have they spoken to Palace? Got some of this Elise money that's been speculated about? They're trying to get early. How much money did they get for Ruben Sellers? So is it a situation where Dayong Pang is literally going to be, oh, you've come in with 750 grand for Lewis Wing, we need 750 grand, you can have him? Or is it a position where they can say, no, you're not going to have Lewis Wing unless you come up with £1.5 million, 2 million. Same with Bindens. Or are they literally just in such a desperation state that a club comes in? Because in that scenario where Wing is, they're going to take any money, there'll be pretty much any championship club or top half team in League One would go, oh, I'll have a punt on Lewis Wing for £500,000. But yeah, if it's, no, you're going to take £2 million to get him, then that really narrows down that list of teams. Because if you look at spending from the championship sides as well, it's only really those that have come out of the Premier League that are actually spending money on fees. Yeah. Most other clubs just wait for contracts to expire. And that's how most Reading players have been poached in recent years, haven't they? They've, we lost a few last January, but before that, they would wait for the likes of Mate and Swift and all of that lot to have their contract expire. And that, because that's better for the player as well, because they can then get a signing on fee. They can have a sort of a bidding war contract wise. So it's all so many unknowns.
I mean, the other thing that we haven't even mentioned is that there will be players that might hand in transfer requests. There's nothing to suggest already that there are 3 or 4 players that have gone, I've had enough of this, I'm out. And already actively touting their agent and going, get me out of here. Regardless, I don't care where it is. I just need to get away from this mess. That could be happening in the background. You don't know. And that's why I think it was quite telling with Noel Hunt, where he was quite open and honest and said, it wasn't a kind of a flippant comment. It was like, there probably will be sales and there might have to be sales. So maybe there's already been conversations where those players have gone, I've had enough. I want to be paid regularly. That's it. So the one thing I would say about the club and on the pitch is that all these players have got an opportunity to play, and you're not guaranteed that if you move somewhere else. So you've got to weigh that up, really. I don't know. I think I'm not looking forward to January at all in terms of how this football club is going to be run. But the best case scenario is we lose one or two players and we're able to replace them with something else, and then we move on from there. The sooner January's done, the better for me, because it's going to be an incredibly long month. It really is.
Yeah, and hopefully some players have a little look at the players that have left this project, so to speak, midway through. Yeah. Femi Aziz not pulling up any trees at Millwall. Obviously, McIntyre's had horrendous injury problems. Tom Holmes not really doing anything. Nelson Abbey again.
Nelson Abbey. I mean, how ridiculous has that been, really?
Yeah, Caelan Vickers is just sitting there playing under 21s, under 23s football for Brighton. So you would like to think some of them would say, do you know what? Because I don't know, Ross, maybe you know, or Ben better than I do, but I can't imagine we've got too many contracts. We're not even talking about players that are going to be out of contract in the summer.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's too many from what I can. That's kind of what I was trying to think about with Bindon. Like, is Bindon up for renewal at the end of the season, or is that next year? I couldn't quite remember, but it certainly hasn't become like a thing that there were a few years in a row there where we were discussing like all the contracts that were running down every single summer because we somehow got ourselves into a situation where all of our best players had contracts ending the same year. That doesn't seem to be the case this time around.
The one final thing I would say is that I wouldn't begrudge any of those players leaving. I said this weeks ago when we first started talking about January, but I wouldn't feel any bitterness towards any of the players. I think they've given, as a group, they've gone above and beyond what they needed to do, and I think they've put up with so much stuff, and they've kept together, and they've been positive in the media and all this kind of stuff. So I wouldn't. It's different with Sellers, I think, in terms of the stuff that he had said and the way that, as we've kind of established, this was the first club that looked at him. But with those players, money talks and being consistently paid talks. And actually, I wouldn't begrudge any of them going. I really wouldn't. I'd be gutted, but you move on. The football club will always move on. The football club is always bigger than that. So we'll see what happens. Loyal Royal, they say only worry about things you can control. Don't be a football fan then, is what they say. So what can the fans do? That's quite nice. They put that in brackets with a little smiley emoji. I thought that was quite good. So what can the fans do regarding the destiny of the club? And should we therefore really worry? Enjoy each match day and let's see what happens. Great result at Wycombe, by the way. Believe everybody. Believe everyone, not everybody. What can the fans do, Wim? There's been a lot of chat on social media recently. What can we do?
Keep turning up. Keep turning up to games. I've seen lots of people throwing in the towel saying, look, I can't support this club anymore. I can't support Dai Yong and stuff. But I think every penny that is going into the football club at the moment, I might be blissfully naive in this, but I believe every penny that is going into the club is literally going on players, keeping the stadium and the training ground going. Put it this way, I mean, Dai Yong has put in however 100 millions. Is he really going to be taking your 100 quid you put in for match hospitality? I don't think so. And also the players, you need to show the players that you're fighting for, that you're not giving up. Those empty seats. Yeah, it's understandable for Cambridge. I didn't go to Cambridge. I had to work early in the morning, so I couldn't go to that game. And there was only 8,500 there listed. Where there was that many people in the stadium, I don't know.
It wasn't. There's no way there was 8,500 there.
Just
no chance.
Keep turning up. Keep supporting the team as much as possible. Keep trying to back whatever. I mean, I don't. The last thing I want to see, and I understand the frustration, is there be people been already talking about, let's get on the pitch on the weekend. And I'm sorry, but it's an automatic 3-point deduction. That's going to hit the players. It's going to add another fixture to a congested fixture list. People could also, start getting themselves in personal trouble. Don't do that. The Sell Before We Die campaign, they've said in their statement after Sellers left, they're considering their next steps and their next move. They've been liaising with the government, with the EFL and stuff like that. So we've got to sort of, I don't want to say allow them to completely dictate how we're going to sort of proceed to keep the pressure on this campaign, but it does almost feel that at this point, the only thing we can do, you talked about, the guy that wrote and said, control the controllables. That is the controllable we can do. We can keep supporting the club. We can do everything we can to back these players, show them that we care, show them that they are, they are loved and respected and adored for what they're doing for our football club. So that'd be my message, as the bloke says every week, DJ Mega Party, back the boys, make some noise.
It's the Cambridge game. There was only 2 other people in my block for that game, and it was just, it was really, really
Robbie
cold.
Savage.
No, it wasn't. No, I wasn't allowed at that point. Actually, they were in the exclusive seats.
He got proper stitched up in that game. I thought it was quite funny that the only person that really got dragged off early in the second half was Charlie, and I'm 90% convinced Ruben saw Robbie in the crowd. He was like, "Here's a parting gift, Robbie."
Yeah,
off he comes.
I think you're right about supporting the team, and our away support is exceptional. It's absolutely incredible, and I understand the apathy and the kind of the frustration and everything else. But you're right. When for me, if I can get to the game, well, I mean, home game isn't kind of non-negotiable, but certainly away games. That's been a long-standing joke in terms of the fact that I don't go away. But like, if I can get there, I'll go there. If I can do it, I'll do it, and I just enjoy it. Like I did enjoy the Cambridge game. Like it was good. I didn't enjoy the game before, which I don't want to talk about ever again. But like generally speaking, I've enjoyed the football this season and watching these players develop and pick up results. I mean, Ross, where are you at with what fans can do at the moment?
Oh, I mean, no, I just agree. Just keep going to the games. I wouldn't want to see the attendances, completely drop off, because I think that it's important that we make, the players know that we see their effort and we are, responding to that with our attendance. And yeah, I'd really not like to see the away efforts diminish, because the away fans have been awesome through the last little while. So yeah, no, I just agree with that. Basically, just keep on going to games, keep on showing the players that you care.
Final one, Matt. We had a question from Matt. MC981871, MC981871, I guess. Sounds like a terrible droid from Star Wars. That's what that sounds like. He basically says, is there any part of you that feels let down by Sellers? And I only thought he'd stick it out until the end of the season. Hull is a massive risk and the timing doesn't really make sense. Could easily see it going badly. How does it go in your opinion? Hopefully we kind of covered that, Matt, earlier on. Like, hopefully you kind of understand where we're at. But, I appreciate you chipping in with it. It's been a difficult week, Matt, to be honest. It's been a really difficult week. And, we're coming out the other side of it now. We're going to get into the preview very, very briefly, mainly on our 400th episode, just to talk to Wim about the history of it a little bit and the potted history and go from there. But also 2 games coming up, believe it or not, on the pitch. So a very, very short break. I'll be back with the final part of episode 399.
Keep up to date with all things Reading FC. Follow the Tilehurst End on Facebook and Twitter.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by ZCZ Films. Remember, if you want to get involved in sponsoring the show, drop us an email to thetilehurstend@gmail.com.
Right, so welcome back to the final part of episode 399 of the Tilehurst End podcast. The Royals head to, get this is a mouthful, now called the Virtue Trophy. I mean,
my word.
I've lost track of what it's called these days, but they just chop and change it as quickly as possible.
I think it's still a car company, so it's still Car Cup, so it's fine.
It's still
the owners. It's the owning company, the company above Bristol Street Motors. I think so. It's the company.
Oh, a coup! A political coup.
They've renamed it, I think, to reflect.
They've just rebadged it.
Brand.
Rebadged
it.
It's rebadged it, you fools. Yeah. So Virtue Trophy round 2. Get this. You'll like this one, Ross. Right. The Poundland Bescott Stadium. Do you know what Poundland is?
I know what Poundland is. I get to occasionally amusingly explain to Americans that we have a shop called Poundland and then leave it at that. So don't worry. Yeah.
How much is this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They have Dollar Tree over here.
Yeah.
Or
Dollar Tree. Okay.
Dollar Tree or
Dollar General.
Dollar General, yeah, that's the other one. Yeah.
That sounds better. Dollar Tree sounds better than Poundland.
They are. I mean, yeah, but they're all much of a muchness, as we said. From what I remember, Poundland was the superior of the stores. There's a good John Oliver segment on American dollar stores, which is worth checking out.
Okay. Well, I mean, it clearly indicates that their stock is worth more than our entire squad. So that'll be interesting to go there, really. 7 o'clock kickoff tomorrow night or today, if you're listening on Tuesday morning. We always do this. Today, 7 o'clock today, if you're listening on Tuesday. 7 o'clock yesterday, if you're listening on Wednesday. I digress. Shut up. And then, of course, we got Blackpool at home. Last game before Father Christmas visits on the 14th. Tickets are still available. Again, I say that every week. There's always tickets available, but that's Steve Bruce's Blackpool coming to town on Saturday. We won't do a preview of those because it's all a bit of a mess at the moment in terms of who might play and who won't play and who's in the staff and who's not in the staff and all this kind of thing. What we will ask Wim, though, is a kind of brief, whatever you want, really, kind of what the Tilehurst End has been through in 400 episodes, because that's what we're on to next week, the 400th episode of this very famous podcast.
Yeah, look, I won't keep too long because I know Ross has got to edit this together, and I think we're already going at a ridiculous
3 hours long.
And as somebody that edited, I think whenever I finished, I think about episode 130, I think, or may have been somewhere around that mark. I can well appreciate the efforts, but look, I think I was very proud to be able to carry it on. I think whenever I'm asked about this, I've got to give massive credit to I know I joked about him at the top of the show, but Westy, who literally started this recording off a keyboard. That's how him and
oh wow.
That's how the sophistication that went. And then Johnny Fordham came in and sort of took it over with the Evening Post, which again, sign of the times. It's a publication that's no longer even with us in a website form. And then I took it over when we got relegated from the Premier League and they didn't want it anymore. You know, Johnny Fordham went off to cover rugby and left me to cover Championship football. So, but it's all about the people that you do it with and the chemistry and the fun you two have. That's what makes it worthwhile. And I was lucky enough to have some great co-hosts in Johnny Williams, and we did the reunion show back in the summer. So if you want loads of stories and older blokes reminiscing about podcasting,
I did enjoy it. It helped us. Well, it helped me out a lot in terms of listening to it and stuff. So yeah,
go check that one out from back in the archives over the summer with people like Handbags and stuff on there. And look, I'm very proud that this website and the podcast has reached 400 episodes, but that is only down to the hard work. I said I gave it up back in 2017, just while my wife was pregnant with our first child, and the fact that you guys do this with family commitments and stuff is astounding to me, and also the work that Mark did, especially continuing it through the pandemic, and all of that sort of stuff at a time where I could barely even bring myself to watch a Reading game. I was so disillusioned. Whether that was just burnt out, I think that's the toll, and I hope it doesn't happen to you too. But I think I almost burnt out on Reading Football Club, and it wasn't even that bad in the years I was doing it. We got promoted to the Premier League, and while I was doing the website anyway, and we got to a playoff final against Huddersfield and all that jazz. But I was so deep into it and was living and breathing Reading Football Club that I kind of burnt out for a few years. And it's been nice to come back, and that you two and Sim and everybody's let me pop in and out when I want to, doing the podcast extra and chat with James and Andy is fantastic. But all the guests that we've had on over the years, if you had said to me when I first started doing it, I thought when I first started getting onto it, having Charles Watts on was a big coup. So getting Charlie Watts on, who actually is a pretty big deal now, a best-selling author now. And I got to speak to the likes of Shaka again. Sorry for Ross for bringing up.
No, I know names. Shaka. Don't worry.
Shaka Hislop.
He does commentary in America.
Shaka's on TV in America.
ESPN icon. Simon Lovell, Simon Osborne, all these players, and again the way that Mark went in, and Ollie Allen as well going in. So look, I'm not going to talk any longer than that, and again, it's to the listeners, because look, if all of you guys and girls stops listening to this show and stop sending in feedback into the bulging mail sack, then everybody loses interest, and yet alone the people that go the extra mile to subscribe to Patreon and buy mugs and turn up to events, things we do. I always said it was, by the fans, for the fans. And that's what it literally is. I mean, look, I could sit and talk to you two for hours, just, about football and things like that. And to be able to have people that join in, and it's one of the big things that got me into podcasting and wanting to continue, is because I listened to that Reading Football Fancast with Weston Williams, and it was like, oh, it's great. I feel like I was just, sat on the end of the table in the pub, just listening to the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that this podcast does that other media can't. And it's funny how things like the overlap now come onto the scene, and people are, oh, this is great, so refreshing to hear. And it's like, well, Fancasts have been doing that for a long time.
Right.
And long may that continue. And look, I joke it's an unprofessional joke of a podcast, but especially with the work you do, Ross, and the tactical analysis and the depth you go into, as opposed to just me and Wesley.
the crap that I come up with.
Well, I was maybe going to say like the crap that me and Wesley used to come up with, just slagging off Hal Robson Canoe and naming awards after him. Bless him.
I can do that too. I'd just be doing it per 90.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have expected craps or something like that.
Yeah.
XC. Look, that is all I will say on it. But look, thank you to everyone who's listened to every episode, and especially to you guys for hosting, Mark and everybody else, Sim for keeping the website going through all of this. You're all heroes. Thank you. From an absolutely selfish point of view, I love the fact that something that I started as just a random idea in 2011 is still generating podcasts and a website. So again, thank you.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, it's a great, we said it all along, very proud to do it. And when we were given an opportunity, there was no way we were going to turn it down, really. And we don't know how long you end up doing it for. I think it's good to change every couple of years and give people a different voice. But look, we are enjoying it to a point. I'm enjoying it to a point. It's not difficult to talk about the club that we love, and it's been very, very difficult times. Of course it has, but we enjoy it, and like you said, we hope that people listening enjoy it as well. We had some sort of feedback from Spotify. Had a really, really good year in terms of consistent listens, and ironically, the Ruben Sellers podcast, I think, was 220%, 228% more than what we normally got in terms of
the Ruben
listenership.
podcast was obviously very popular, as was the James Oliver Pierce podcast in 2024, and that was awesome. And again, like, that's one of the best things about doing this, is just the opportunity to speak with those kinds of people. Those ones were great. But yeah, there's a consistent crowd of you guys that have been sticking around, and yeah, it's very appreciated. Every time you guys listen in, it pops into your feed and you give us a listen. It's very much appreciated on our end. Obviously, it just helps us know, we're not talking into the abyss. There is a very consistent little base in there, and we really appreciate you guys.
Talking of appreciation, we massively appreciate you coming on. It makes me feel a bit sick that this is the first time we've got you on since we've been doing it. That's really, really bad. But you technically got your own show, right? So
yeah, I mean, look, I've not had you two on the podcast extra, so maybe we'll do the same later in the season. But no, look, please keep doing what you're doing. It's entertaining stuff. You provide that sane bit of and safe space, whether it's a win, lose, or draw, which we all really respect. And I speak now as primarily a listener and semi-retired joke of a podcaster. Semi-retired, yeah. I'm approaching that age. I'm in the pod. Me and Mark are in the old host's home with Westy. So look, keep doing what you're doing, and look, I will always pop on wherever I can. I said, if you need barely adequate analysis, I will be there.
Nice. Well, listen, we, as always, appreciate support. As we said already, by the time you listen to this, there may well be 2 pods this week. Obviously, episode 399, which is this one, but also Wim's podcast extra with local journalists, Andy and James. So that will be out later on this week. Have a really good week, everybody. We'll be back next week with the 400th episode. No idea what that looks like yet. We will throw it together probably at the last minute, because we are, of course, an unprofessional joke of a podcast. Ross, thank you so much for your time, as always. Lots of time. Must be nearly your dinner time, surely.
Appreciate you guys. We're going to wing it like Lewis Wing. It's going to be great.
Exactly.
And if it goes like him, it's going into the top corner.
Screamers. That's all we do on this pod. Yes. Screamers. Have a good one, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time on the Tilehurst podcast. Come on, you Ars.